Hi, I'm Laura Young, an environmental campaigner and scientist, and I've been on a journey myself thinking about what sustainability means for me. But one of the topics that always comes up is stuff, the stuff that we consume and how that relates to climate change. So let's go and have a chat about it.
So why does stuff and consumption matter when it comes to climate change?
I feel that consumption and the stuff that we buy is always the topic that goes under the radar when we think about climate change. But we often forget that when we make something, whether it's a t-shirt or a car, there's lots of energy that goes into that. It might be transported around the world. All of that takes carbon to do that. We then use it. We might have to wash it, top it up, charge it. You know, that's all energy as part of the life cycle of a thing. And then, of course, at the end, we throw it away. And so actually the things that we consume have a lot of carbon related to them, which, of course, comes into climate change. And there was a stat that always stuck with me when it came out, and it was because Zero Waste Scotland did some research looking at the carbon intensity of the stuff that we have. And actually, as a country, 80% of our carbon footprint comes from the things, the stuff that we buy and consume.
Wow, that's really interesting. I guess I never really thought of it as being such a huge part of what we're dealing with. Is it something that's relatively easy for people to get involved with?
I guess take people, because one of the things we also need to recognise is that people around the world consume different amounts of stuff. We consume a lot more than other parts of the world, sometimes like 10 times as much. But that's also changed over time. Since the 1980s, we buy about 5 times more clothes than we used to. So we need to recognise that, individuals have got a part to play in this. Also buying better, thinking about how we can buy drinks and food without as much plastic packaging, or, trying to find eco alternatives to like everyday items. I always come back to that, how everyone's heard like reduce, reuse, recycle, and everyone's always like, oh, it's great, yeah, I recycle. And you forget that's the last one, like that's the last R. I think it's just all of us thinking like, what are the little things we can do that add up to like a culture shift as well, that we move away from this like overconsumption, mass consumption.
That's a really nice way of thinking about it, actually. So obviously there's lots of individual actions we can take, but does any of it need to come from the business level or from the government?
So I think that companies have a lot of responsibility to make their items fixable. I know that one of the big examples is particularly around tech. If you've got a t-shirt and you get a hole in it, some of us can sew, we can give it a go. But if you have a mobile phone or a washing machine, if it breaks, like how on earth are you supposed to fix that? I know I'm not pulling my washing machine out and trying to fix it. And there's a lot of work being done, from business and governments. This kind of right to repair is something that's kind of growing and coming up. And it's this idea that we have the right to repair things that we buy. And actually, it opens up this whole other economy that you get into. I've been trying to do this for a few years now. And I've stopped, buying lots of new stuff and saved lots of money and, kind of stay away from those shops or those practices. But suddenly I'm using like seamstresses and tailors, and I'm like going into all these different spaces and hiring people to mend things and going to workshops. And suddenly it's like opens up this whole other world of like people and jobs that we can also be supporting while just buying a little bit less and saving that carbon.
Yeah, no, I love that idea, and that you're actually helping keep all these pretty valuable trades alive and going. So obviously there is some criticism on this, like it can be really expensive to buy sustainably. What barriers do people face in terms of their consumption, and how can we kind of overcome this?
I think you've got accessibility, like what's near you. I'm about to move and there's going to be a zero waste shop 300 metres from my front door, but I've never had that before. So for me, it's going to be a lot easier, but for lots of people, they just don't have those options. And I think another big one is finance, like personal finance. People maybe, not having the money to pay extra for someone to come and repair something than to buy a new one. That's when we need to start working to say, actually, these options need to be cheaper, they need to be better, they need to be better for everyone, because ultimately sustainability only works if everyone can take part.
I loved how enthusiastic Laura was about everything we can do. I think I hadn't realised just kind of how bad consumerism was. I've kind of tried to cut back a lot in my own life, and I guess I kind of was stuck in that narrow-minded, oh, well, I'm doing okay, but, forgot it's a much bigger problem than that. I mean, 80% is a massive figure. So yeah, just kind of enthused to go away and see what else I can change and talk to others about it as well.